doing. And she's had a problem where her rating, according to the Better Business Bureau, is an F on a scale of A to F. F, of course, being the lowest grade. And she's highly defensive and has been working on a paper to describe her work now for 19 months, which is a tad excessive, even if you're doing anything as involved as DNA analysis. Because if you have the correct equipment, there's a sequencer that looks at particular areas of the DNA. And remember, you've got millions of bits of information in DNA. And it has to look at a specific location, which this equipment is set up to do. And then it looks at the amino acid sequence, which this machine does, and then it passes it on to a genome project, which has the genome matched out of all these different creatures. And then it looks for the best match or an exact match, and it tells you what you have. Well, she doesn't have that equipment. So if she's doing it by hand manually, which is not necessarily saying that it's going to not work, but it does say that there is an increased possibility of error.
So that's one side of it. The other thing that we're seeing, and for you ghost hunters, something you might want to be aware of. We'll have a witness call in, and let's say there's a team of you of 4, and you go out and you do an investigation, and the witness kind of backs off and they get quiet, and you need to go out there again because you see a possibility of something. You're not sure what it is. You've seen and heard and maybe gotten a photograph that looks a little bit iffy. You want to go back again. But now the witness chooses one member of the team and calls. And they want only to work with that one member. Do you refuse that?
Yes.
You should, because you might have something going here that's just not right, and your examination of the evidence could fall apart.
One of the reasons why that you get that is with the psychological types, and I think everybody in the room took, stayed or went with us on that little pre-out. Is certain of the psychological types will search out individuals that they think are sympathetic or empathetic to their cause, and they can most readily and easily pull the wool over their eyes. And that's precisely why you should resist trying to play favorites. And we're here to do an investigation. If you want to do the investigation right, that's fine. If you don't want to do it right, then perhaps you ought to talk to somebody else. And that usually calls them out right away, because you'll find the truth the minute you say that.
True. Now we have, I haven't even had a chance to talk to Scott yet, but we do have a mystery in the UFO community. And we're not sure why this is happening. We would like to know. It's being investigated very quietly. But someone is collecting human DNA. I'm not going to name names right now, but they're volunteering. They're getting volunteers to collect human DNA for some sort of, we don't know, experiment. And somebody goofed and told somebody, and it leaked out, and it is happening. So far, there's over 100 volunteers. And they're sending their samples in to an organization that is connected to a very well-known organization, and we don't know what's going on. This type of thing can happen, and it makes you kind of spooked.
Well, there is a government agency doing that.
Yeah.
I should say private agency doing that in order to trace lineage.
To what?
Well, no, going back to
Right.
genetic Eve,
Right.
And genetic Adam. They're trying to figure out where everybody came from,
Yeah.
and how the migrations across the planet occurred, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what you're describing is probably clandestine and
It
not
is.
related to that.
It is, yeah.
we're having, again, something similar. This is with the Erickson project, is information. Obviously, if you're sitting there working on a report, you got a whole bunch of people involved, nothing is going to be compartmentalized and kept secret for any length of time, so there's leaks. And of course, the people involved are not experienced enough to know how to deal with that. So little bits and pieces keep coming out. One piece that has made the public is that they have analyzed one set of contributed samples, and they've discovered that the mitochondrial DNA is human, no question about it. And this is from a hair sample. The nuclear DNA is from something that is most definitely, quote, not human. Now, the problem with that is, what are you telling us? Human defined as Homo sapiens sapiens, which is what we are. Okay. Human as in anything belonging to the genus Homo that may or may not be extinct. That's another issue, but as long as the word homo precedes whatever it is, it's human, according to science. Maybe not according to, of course, this woman's supposedly a trained veterinary, so she should know better. Okay, so you start asking questions. Well, if it's definitely not human, what are we talking, Star Child? Are we talking, something from outer space? Well, if so, you better be damn prepared to, to prove what you're saying. Or you better be able to come up with something to support it. And of course, the reason I know about this is I've been asked to comment, and actually by several of the parties, I was asked to do some of the DNA myself, which unfortunately, due to my eyesight now, I can't do. But I've been doing DNA separations from the time I was in high school. So it's a subject I know a good bit about.
Yeah, so I confide in Scott an awful lot when some of these things leak out. Some of them leak out due to fear. These people get into something that they volunteer for, and they become fearful for whatever reason, we're not sure, and they reach out to someone and say, I'm getting frightened. Evidence disappears into the darkness, and we can't recover it. I myself was a part of a volunteer situation where 13 individuals were chosen to have a box put in their home, and we were tracked. Drawings of our home were made. They knew where the electric circuits were. They knew where everything was. We were supposed to be told, or tell them, the individuals doing the experiment, this was for abductees, if we set up our Christmas decorations, and when they were plugged in, they put a new phone system in my home. This box was put where I spent most of my time sleeping, so it could watch me where my head was. And they called at one point, and I kept a journal, and if something happened, I would write it in the journal, or I thought something happened. And they called me one day and said, you moved your answering machine. And I said, no, I did not. Well, oh yes, you did. No, still where it was. Well, at some point, they asked if they could extend the experiment. And I agreed. So instead of having this in my home for 8 weeks, it was there for over maybe 8-9 months. At one point, the person that installed the unit in my home said that they called, gave me a half-an-hour warning, told me how to disconnect it and set it up for their pickup. Only that individual had not come to the door to pick up the unit. A man in a military attire came to pick it up. And I couldn't tell if it was a government vehicle that he took it away in, but he took it away along with my journal. After that, following that, I could not reach the psychologist that was involved in it, couldn't reach the engineer, could not reach anybody. And it's gone. For the sake of discovering how that little investigation turned out, there's no information.
Of course, there was no redundancy.
No. And the 13 of us that were involved, we don't know each other. I have someone kind of looking to see. There's all kinds of excuses made. It was written up in the journal, at the MUFON Journal at one point, kind of halfway explained they didn't have enough funding now to complete the readings in this mystery box. So who knows what happens to these things, and who knows what kind of information they pulled from my home for all those months. I know some things happened. The person that took that box away wasn't the one that brought it to begin with. And so that's the kind of thing that makes you feel invaded. It makes you wonder what's happening in your life when you know things happened prior to that made you volunteer for these things. And so people that decided, oh, it's okay, I'll give my DNA. What's going on here?
Well, not that people who really want it can't get it anyway. You'd be surprised. You smoke, your DNA's on a cigarette butt. You drink and use a glass or a paper cup, your DNA's on the cup. So, I mean, it's virtually impossible to avoid giving up DNA if you have a lab that's good enough at being able to extract it. And, you know, even the skin flakes that your dead skin sheds, if somebody goes out there with the proper equipment, can collect it from a table or your wheelchair or whatever, your car seat, they've got your DNA.
It's easier and easier to collect that today. It wasn't quite as easy in the past to take older samples.
There are certain things like hair that in the past, to get a DNA reading on it, you had to have a hair follicle, the actual root of the hair, because you had to have the living tissue. And that is true if all you're going to get, or what you're after, is nuclear DNA. You still have to have tissue. All right, but if you are looking for the mother's lineage, hair, even though it's a protein and not a cell, hair contains waste from cells. And one of the waste products that's in it is the mitochondrial part of the cellular structure, which is shed periodically as the cells deteriorate. So from a hair sample that's just hair, you can pull mitochondrial DNA. You cannot pull, as a rule, nuclear DNA. And a lot of people don't understand that or don't know that.
Yeah,
and there is a difference. The mitochondrial has only the mother's genetic structure. The nuclear DNA has both the mother's and the father's nuclear structure.
And now, having said all of this, we have individuals that have had sightings of spirit, ghosts, abduction experiences, sightings of UFOs and Sasquatch that have mixed memories of things and sometimes very little memory in the past, are suddenly having recall stronger and stronger, whether through dreams or something that occurs that triggers a memory. And all of a sudden they have all this to deal with, and they're not sure where it came from, and it's like, uh-oh, I'm really afraid, I'm panicking. Where did this come from? I know I saw it now. I can draw it. Who do I give it to? And it's very, very sudden in, the past year. We've got more and more movies coming out, but what they're turning into us doesn't resemble the movies, so they're not copying. It's not a screen memory from a movie or a book. So we're questioning, why is this happening? Why are these memories coming forward so suddenly?
Well, part of that maybe would be that the society in general has become more accepting of paranormal phenomena.
That's true. And so you ghost hunters are now going to have to take a look at things from your end, as we are. Are they seeing ghosts? Are they seeing entities from our end of the scale? Because they're becoming more visible. Are these little grays? We need to study your end, and you need to take a look at ours, because they're really getting mixed in there. What's walking through the bedroom at night might just be a ghost. But if those are big almond-shaped eyes, or it's something
not
with
if it's walking through
fur.
my bedroom, because I've just had some really weird experiences that
Yeah.
way.
So
I've noticed now in the past few years, I have a recurring set of dreams that recur in a particular sequence. One night I'll dream that I can fly, and I'm flying, and things are misdirecting me, and I'm not going where I want to go, but I'm still way over everything, and then it's like I'm the plane. Then I have a night horror, if you will, where I wake up screaming my head off because I know there's an entity or something in the room. I don't want to look at it, but I know it's there. And it's always the same sequence.
A recurring dream.
Yeah.
So we had some people, ghost investigators there and there and there. Can you compare anything of what we've said to what you've experienced? Like confusing entities with spirits so that you're not sure what they've seen?
One of the things that I've been watching on the internet and reading up on was these orb ribbons that they see in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I've come up with the idea is that a lot of these orbs that you see could be environmental probes that the aliens have going around. Like an energy type probe that analyzes the environment and the interaction of people in the environment. And that might be what some of the orb structures that they see is. Because I get a lot of strange ones out at night in the woods and or in cemeteries or just out in like parking lots and stuff.
And we're having more and more sightings of these. They're usually orange,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes with what looks like a fire inside them,
Yeah.
and they're getting bigger and bigger.
Some get big,
yeah.
some stay small, but the ones that I've seen on the internet are the ribbon orbs. That there's like 1,000 orbs all in a ribbon just floating, and then they just disintegrate together and go different areas.
Well, these ones that we're seeing right now usually enter a craft. When they're done doing whatever it is they're doing, they go straight up, and if you look up, you'll see one of the big triangles or a boomerang-shaped craft, and they enter the craft. And that's how we know they're not just, well, the ghost hunters, dust, particles, one of those types of things.
Well, I'm not talking about the dust particles and stuff. I'm talking about a real good impression
Solid.
orb, something that's self-illuminating.
And these can be as big as a
Like his
pickup
night
truck.
frights and stuff could be one of them orbs down here absorbing some of his memories or something, or checking him out or something, and then it leaves and he comes up in a night fright.
Well, you don't know. So
Yeah.
now again, you ghost hunters, be aware that these things exist now. And just in the past month, we've had, gosh, I don't know, maybe 30 or more reports.
No, my gut reaction to my experience, if we're talking about that, is, I'm very comfortable. I mean, my son certainly knows if I saw a Bigfoot, I'd run up to it, shake his hand, and say, "Hey, where you been for 35 years?" So anything that's benign is not going to concern me, but I have an innate sense of evil. I know when something isn't right. So for me to wake up like I'm waking up, knowing and sensing there's something evil, some evil presence in the room with me, that's something I know.
That would be something for these ghost guys to
I don't
check
even want
out.
to look at it. I mean, I'm there, I won't even open my eyes. I just know that it's there, I can feel it. And it's a weird sensation. I mean, I've never opened my eyes and seen, grays and or God knows whatever other types they've got. You know all that. But whatever it is, I sense is not there for a good reason.
Yes.
Well, one phenomenon that kind of mixes between the two genres is sleep paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep
That's
paralysis
true.
can be
Oh,
associated with
Oh, yeah.
That's
exactly.
true.
The abduction experience as well as,
And I've had that. Wake up in complete, I
Me too.
can't open my eyes, I'm sweating and tearing,
Me too.
something doesn't feel right, and I can't.
And my
move.
doctor
Yeah.
being diabetic, my doctor tries to blame it invariably on blood sugar fluctuation.
Right.
But I've got a glucometer sitting right next to my bed, and every time I wake up after an event like that, the first thing I do is check my blood sugar, and it's always normal.
Do any of you work with any kind of mediums or psychics as a part of your team, or do you do?
I'm developing my abilities.
Some of you, whether you want to or not, can walk into a place and sense that it's not a comfortable place to be. It's just flat not comfortable. Any of you have that experience?
Yeah.
that it's a negative place to be versus, oh, there's just maybe a spirit
Well, and there's something.
visiting? Okay, so, yeah, that's part of what a person would do if they are
And
sensitive.
you know from the last PIA conference, Robert has sensitivity he's not fully developed. And there are nights, although he doesn't remember doing it, I do, because his bedroom's down the hall from me. I have heard him wake up screaming his head off, but he doesn't wake up. He has no idea he's doing it.
Really? What do you think would cause that?
That's what we're talking about, isn't it?
What would cause that? I don't even know I'm doing it, but he tells me I'm...
One of these nights I'm going to have to record you, because you're not going to believe, I have actually seen you when you woke me up, standing bolt upright in your bed, screaming your head off.
Seriously?
And you're totally asleep. You have no idea you're doing it.
How did you... did you...
Because of the noise.
That would be
I
one
don't know
thing.
why that would happen.
So I know it's not a dream state because you're screaming. So there's got to be something going on in our house. What it is, I don't know. But he seems to be sensitive to it. And
But the
I
thing
know
is, I don't remember ever doing that.
Of course not. If you don't wake up in the middle of a dream, you won't remember it.
No, I don't remember screaming or anything. He tells
Of
me.
course not. If you don't wake up in the middle of it, you won't remember it.
But you guys, as far as your ghost hunting, if you walked into a place and maybe you haven't had it happen yet, and we haven't had it happen as far as running into a spirit, you walk in and you're starting to do your initial investigation and you're checking out the area of the home or whatever, and one of these times it's going to happen. You walk into an area or a piece of property and it's actually not a spirit, it's a UFO situation, and you walk right smack into one of these little gray creatures. This is where we're going to have to start sharing information. What would you do?
Well, see, I've run into where my team, it doesn't, I have not fully exposed everything that's about to happen with my breaking. We're about to go do an investigation at her house. Well, we're about to now go into the UFO portion because she gets visited. She knows where they live. She knows what they look like. They visit. It is now not only gone, and there are some paranormal there too, but now they're going to be stepping into that whole side of the world out there and crossing that path.
Because you just can't put everything down and run away.
I want to see it. It's, it's
Well, you think
in
you do.
in the woods or that's true. Once I see it, you may be careful what you wish for.
Same as with the Sasquatch. You're walking in the woods and I'm going to see this guy and I'm not afraid, and he steps out from behind a tree. And so far you've just heard the wood knocking and the rock throwing and so forth that they're known for in certain areas. And now he steps out from behind a tree and you see your Sasquatch and he's right where that camera is. And now you're stuck. What are you going to do about it?
Well, if you're me, you suppress the memory knowing you've had it for 35 years and wait until you no longer have any empires to build and then you go public.
I would take a picture.
Well, that's not always the case. Back when that first happened to me, Robert, they didn't have cell phone cameras. We didn't even have cell phones. The government may have, but we didn't.
So what do we all do? What do we do with this idea that all these movies are coming out about UFOs? Are we close to disclosure? Why are people calling different states for help rather than their own? Are they trying to hide from someone or something? Do they think they're safer calling someone else at a distance from where they live? I've heard stories that they feel they're protected. They feel more protected, more secure and safe calling someone else, telling their story, and then nobody's going to get them. They want to tell their story now, and they want it written down and they want it documented. Maybe that's all they want, but there's got to be a reason for it. Maybe we all need to think about it. I don't know if any of you all are having that kind of difficulty, if they're wanting more anonymity when you go out to investigate a case, or if they're okay with you sharing your stories.
Why do people use Facebook?
Yeah.
Why do people go into chat rooms behind screen names and not using their real name?
What were you going to say?
I said we always leave that completely up to the client, whether we disclose or not.
What would you say if you had to put a figure to the amount of people that want it kept totally secret?
Majority of them. Usually, if most of the clients we've dealt with don't want anything advertised about it, and going off of your earlier session, the ones that do have already had an agenda. They wanted somebody to come in and validate. Our team's perspective on it is we don't go in convinced that there's anything going on or under the assumption that we're going to validate anything. As a matter of fact, we go in with the intent of debunking everything that we find.
We do too.
And
we go to debunk.
And with what, so with that mindset, we're not into, and sometimes that disappoints the client because we're not in there to prove anything that they've said. As a matter of fact, I've told them just up front, I said, we're going to try very hard to disprove everything you just told us. And that said, then hopefully we can, find out what you're experiencing and why you're experiencing it.
Yeah.
Has anybody had the experience that they did such a great job documenting visually in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the Dreyfus character?
Have they, say that again?
In a classic sighting situation where what's happened is real, the description of what Richard Dreyfus did as his character in Close Encounters of the Third Kind is exactly on target.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in his case, he was really good at sculpting.
Yeah.
So he tried to, whatever it was he saw, he tried to sculpt it. The woman tries to draw it because that's her strength, et cetera, et cetera. And I have encountered that in several of my investigations, the Jennifer Ward being the most classic.
Right.
But from a psychological point of view, when that acting out is occurring, what you're dealing with is real. It actually happened. Their psyche is trying to get their mind around it, come up with an explanation that they can live with, and they're literally reliving every second of what occurred until you can give them closure, so that there's an answer to what happened, what they saw. And that's actually the classic, that is the best eyewitness you can possibly have.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
In the case, Denise, one of our cases that we just recently completed, the time between the event and the report was 40 years. How does that fit in with?
Okay, that fits in. And a clinical hypnotist, however, you don't have to use hypnosis to bring forth memories. By talking to an individual and talking through something that old, you can bring up memories from the subconscious. Just letting them talk through it and tell their story over and over, and then you coming up with questions based on what they've said could bring forth more memories, and then asking them to draw what they saw can be explosive for them. Draw it, put it on paper, draw. Oh my goodness.
But
That's
to expand on that a bit, and that's exactly right, but it is very important that you know forensic interview technique so that you're not asking leading questions.
Yeah, don't make
You're not in the construct of your questions telling the eyewitness what it is you want to hear, because they're likely to spit it right back at you.
Right.
You have to, there's a procedure that you need to follow in framing your questions. And I mentioned in the previous thing that, when Jennifer Ward, basically told CBS to take a hike, I made everyone that interviewed her submit to me in advance the questions they were going to ask. And if they were unwilling to ask proper forensic questions, hit the highway, folks, you ain't going to see her.
Right.
Because what happens is, and then I had BIFRO people there, and I had Infro people there, and all kinds of people who absolutely insisted they had the right to interview her. And if I had let her do it, her testimony would have been so corrupted by what they were doing that she wouldn't have been a reliable witness. And as a result, of keeping it very, very, very tightly controlled in terms of how they got access to her and how it went, it literally became the Bigfoot shot heard around the world. I mean, she was in newspapers all the way around the world because we kept it, and she's never deviated from her story, ever. There's never been any embellishment. There's never been any change. It is the same story time after time after time. But if she had been contaminated, which is the word we use, by other people asking questions that were inappropriately phrased, you would never have stood the test of time.
No, you wouldn't.
Well, we also had her tell us her story backward to forward.
That's a good idea.
That's a good technique.
Yeah. And don't ever say, did you see this or this or this? Because, I've got something to choose from. And it might not be any one of them. Multiple choice is a no-no. Don't ever use that. We're a little bit luckier, and I think you too, because when you get the whole thing down and you're pretty sure your report is getting close to final, we have a manual that we use, like someone selecting a criminal from a lineup, because we have abductees that have seen entities, and there are a select few that are seen over and over and over again. And it's not people that have talked to people, and from your manual, that we can open a book and say something familiar about any of these head shapes, face shapes to you. Same with the craft that they've seen. Anything look familiar to you on any of these pages? And they'll go, oh yeah, that right there, I'm certain of it. Well, could you fill it out some more? And just like the skunk ape and the Sasquatch and the various areas, we had the abominable snowman in Colorado. I heard one, but I didn't see it. I know I was real close. And they all look slightly different. So you can, in the end, hold that profile and say, anything familiar to you? Oh yeah, that one. And most of the time they had no idea that they were in this area, so it really had to look similar to this one here.
And you do have to be careful of lineups too, because
you
can give them an impression. Towards the end of things, that's really good.
That's good.
But right up front, it's not necessarily good. And one of the most classic ones in cryptozoology is in Africa, after interviewing people about the Kongamatu, which is a flying reptile, that apparently is a relic pterodactyl of some kind. When the individuals were shown a variety of different flying creatures, the one that every single one of them focused on was a rhamphorhynchus.
I remember you telling me about that.
And what's really intriguing, if you study paleontology as I do, on top of that, the rhamphorhynchus is known in only 2 areas, and it apparently migrated between this part of sub-Saharan Africa and Europe. So even the fossil record is right on target for what these people were reporting. And as delicate as these fossils are, it's not likely they've seen the fossils.
So, anybody have any questions or comments further on anything that we could help you with as far as...
Can you explain the UFO sighting alert? I recently read it. Despite every state, the U.S. is up to the level of alert for UFO sightings. Can you explain the levels of that? Or?
The various levels of alert?
The current flop that's going on, I think you can speak of.
Okay. The main flap that's going on are these orange orbs. Is that what you're talking about?
No, you know how like we have a security level for the United States with different colors. There's alert level, supposed alert level for UFO sightings.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, the categories.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, category 1 for UFO sightings around the world, actually, as far as MUFON goes, means that something anomalous has been seen in the sky.
Okay.
there's something there that's not a planet, and it's not a rocket, it's not identified as a plane, it's just something up there, and it could have anomalous type movements, zigzag, circling, something odd. Okay, that's category 1. Category 2 is an object that has come close enough, within 500 feet, it hasn't landed,
Okay.
to a witness.
Okay.
And they can identify it as something that's, it's not right, this thing just ain't right. And so they can do a drawing, and maybe they've got photographs. Then we slip into category 3, which is something that has landed. It is within 500 feet of the witness. And it is also left trace evidence, and they have possibly seen an entity. That's how that works. Okay? Any other questions, comments? No? I think that's everything I have to say. Scott, are you?
I can't comment any further unless people have questions about,
No.
what do I do when this happens? What do I do if ET shows up in my bedroom? What do I do if I see ET with a Sasquatch?
I know. What do I do if I see a Sasquatch, a UFO, and an ET? And we're starting to see something
What do I do if I see a Sasquatch getting out of the aircraft?
Yeah, we have seen rare, but the Sasquatch leaving, what looks like they're leaving just following the sighting of a UFO. Has he been dropped off?
So many American cultures believe that.
Yeah,
So
they do.
you're basically saying my big hairy friend is a big hairy pet.
Chewbacca.
That sounds more like the junkyard dogs that guard my RV. What do you get when you cross a Sasquatch with a pit bull? I really don't know, but it's big, it's hairy, and it's fast enough that you don't see it till it bites you in the ass.
Well, we thank you for your time. We hope we shared enough information to give you some food for thought.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Thank you.
And you know what? Now we're going to get a whole bunch of questions privately out there.
Yeah. Yeah. What happens now?
What time is it now? Please don't tell me it's time for another show.
I just thought of a question for you.
Okay, we have a question.
Has anybody ever tracked a Bigfoot track to the end?
If there's enough of them, they've attempted it. But usually there's only 1 or 2 errant tracks. There's rarely ever a trail.
That's what I've been hearing all the time. You cannot never find a trail. You only find a few tracks. Now, what would cause something like that? Because there's plenty of ground out there that's not hard.
Some ground, based on its nature, is not really good at preserving tracks. They do seem to use waterways as their highways. So a lot of tracks are seen adjacent to water. I would imagine they travel in the water because it conceals their tracks. And of course, unless you're really good at side spotting, you can't really see tracks in piles of leaves and foliage and ground cover in the woods. So it gets very difficult.
Because I've read a couple of reports in there about Native American trackers, military trackers, game trackers. They always say that the tracks just disappear.
Yep. And I've heard that, and I've seen that, and it defies all logic because I have a lot of Native American friends, and I can't believe that they have trouble tracking because they're really good at it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But and sometimes we'll see various types of sign in a given area, but not necessarily all track sign, not necessarily all tree limb twists or breaks, not necessarily rock piles. I mean, one of the weirdest ones we've ever had happen was we were working in the Green Swamp closed area, and every time we'd go in, there'd be a pile of rocks in the middle of the road about the size of a cinder block that if you rode over, it would do damage to the undercarriage of your car or your vehicle. Well, we take the rock or rocks and we throw them off the road. An hour or two would go by and we'd come back down the road. Guess what's in the middle of the road again? And we dispose of it, and we'd go out for a while, and we'd come back, and we'd go in, and guess what's in the road again? And I mean, and this just became a game, if you will. And we all thought somebody was punking us, but
No, I need you guys to use the mic when you're talking.
it wasn't. Oh, well, we haven't been.
We're done, really, but we're,
Okay, because they can't hear nothing on the web.
Oh,
uh-oh.
oh dear. Oh well.
We didn't know
We
that.
screwed up.
Thank you.
No problem.
We didn't know.
But
Sorry.
this became kind of a joke, and we all finally compared notes because it obviously wasn't the same person all the time that was finding this. And we were sitting around in the dining tent during the expedition, and somebody mentioned it, and then we all said, "Yeah, we've all been dealing with this for the past week. What the hell's going on here?" And don't you know, we eventually had a sighting in the late afternoon associated with that rock pile.
Well, now that you mentioned that, when I used to hunt with this one group out there in the forest, we deer hunt with dogs and stuff like that, we would drag the roads at night with a chain link fence to knock down all the trails and tracks and everything else, so that when we come back out that next morning, you see fresh tracks.
Right.
But we had problems with big pieces of lime rock being in the road.
Yep.
And it was like what you're talking about now that I'm thinking about it, because we would move the stuff during the night whenever we dragged the roads, but then the next day it was all back in the road again,
Yep.
in different areas.
Yep, that's exactly the kind of thing we're talking
I
about.
didn't think nothing about it until you just said that, and I remembered that.
Well, these animals
It's a big chunk
communicate.
of rock, they would tear up your car if you run over them.
Well, these animals communicate in strange ways, and I don't know if you've been a Boy Scout in the past, but one of the ways we used to mark trails was using a pile of rocks or sticks.
Well, I do that anyhow.
So, these things apparently are doing the same thing in a strange way, but they're doing it. And
When I go hiking, I break limbs to mark my trails.
yeah, they do that too.
Yeah.
Were the rocks heavy enough?
Oh yeah, they were not the kind of thing that just got there by accident. Yeah. Yeah, we kind of thought that what at first, because I knew that there were equestrians that would ride through there. And we kind of thought they were marking trails or pathways or something, and we wound up inquiring and talking to the rangers and everything else, and no, there was no way
Other
that
hunters
was happening.
trying to keep us out of that area.
Well, but in that particular case, in the closed area of the Green Swamp, you can't do that because it's not open to hunters no matter what you do. And we had to get special permission to work in there. And P.S., after we had our experiences, reported it and wrote a report to Swiftmud, they closed the area and won't let anybody in there now. Big comment? Okay, good. So I'll see you at 6. Oh dear.
Are you rolling? Okay.